Hello, I'm Jason Miller. I'm Steven's brother, and I wanted to do a video honoring in memory and tribute of whatever language we're using. Um, I wanted to do this specifically for the YouTube like baseball card collecting community that Steven was a part of, because I know you're so spread out as it is in the internet age, and there were a lot of things that were shared at the funeral and all that but I kind of wanted to share with you all as well, um, and partially in thanks, in gratitude for what you guys have meant to him and to his family. um, one of the funny things that happened when we all got to Pennsylvania for the funeral was that Stephen's wife was telling us about his cards and the YouTube and all that, and none of us really knew about that. And so, we knew about cards or whatever, but we didn't know that he, was kind of making these videos and all that kind of stuff. And so, that kind of made something click to me, because there was in the GoFundMe that had been set up earlier. There was a name. Oh, I wish I could remember what it was. But it was talking, and it was like a collectors group or something like that. And I was like, I remember asking my wife, "Who in the world is this?" Because it's always fun just kind of go see who you recognize. And I was like, I have no idea who this is. Well, now I know. Now I know it's one of you. Um, and so I just wanted to take a little bit to kind of tell you about Stephen from his family of origin perspective, and kind of share a little bit about him from that perspective. So I wrote in a comment on Stephen's last video that if as great of a guy as you thought Stephen was, if you only knew him by his videos, I promise you he was that and more in real life. Stephen was a genuine person, and just a self-giving person. Unlike just in the top 1 percentile of people who are that way. And so, um, you got to see that, and I'm just telling you that that's absolutely the case, at all times. Um, Stephen was a Stephen was the fourth. Let me find my. Well, I'll talk about that here in a minute. Um, I didn't really plan this. I'm not a YouTuber, clearly. Matter of fact, I have hundreds of videos, but they're all unlisted. They're all classes that I teach at the college where I teach, and they're all like video lectures and stuff. So maybe I don't have hundreds of lectures, but I have a lot of lectures. And so I'm mostly just doing lectures. I'm not kind of doing all kinds of other things here. So those are pretty easy, just kind of mimic what I do in the classroom. Um, but I will talk about the family and all that. So um, let me flip back over to here. This is me and Stephen back at his ordination. Stephen and I were both in pastoral ministry, and this was his ordination in 2010, and it's about the most recent picture I could find of just the two of us. We don't do a lot of photo taking. We just do a lot of hanging out when we're together. And so, anyway, this was that picture that I found of him that I wanted to use here. Let's see. So this is Stephen and his family. This is the picture that his wife Deanna was using in public settings, and so I feel comfortable sharing that here with you all. So that's Deanna. and their four children: Carly, who is in the graduation regalia, and Megan, who is in the front, and then on the bottom are Micah and Callan. Micah on the left, Callan on the right. If you've ever looked at Steven's video on his card show buddies, it features Micah and Callan, and so I'd encourage you to check that out. And he kind of lets them talk about their cards they like, and it's a fun little insight into Steven was definitely family oriented, and so that was a great, that video was a great example of that. Um, and so I'll I just want to, I want to include, again, the way I kind of became aware of you all was through the GoFundMe, and I'm going to put a link to the GoFundMe in the description here on YouTube. Just if anyone hasn't or wants to, or do you want to share that link, please do so, to help Deanna and their kids as they move on to a new chapter, a very unknown chapter in life. Um, now this is Stephen's family of origin. This is another old picture, and this is the last time that all of us were probably together, all eight of us, my mom and my dad and our and the eight kids. This is, I think, 2014. So it's a pretty old picture. Um, but so here you've got. So I'm the oldest. I'm right here. This is Derek. Derek is second. If Stephen learned to his construction trade from Derek, and so Stephen was a pastor, but also worked in construction for many many years, including even up until his death, he was working construction and being a pastor. And he learned working with Derek, and so Derek still does that. This is Nathan. Nathan is number three. And so a lot of times if you hear Stephen talking about like his brother who he did things with, it was probably Nathan. Nathan's a year older than Stephen, and so they were really close in age, and did a lot of things together that they're like one of the videos Stephen talks about, like it was collecting police cards from the Moline, Illinois police force. And Stephen gives a picture of that, and kind of shows some of those cards off. And almost certainly the person he was collecting with was Nathan. And this over here, this is Matthew. He is the youngest of the boys. There is a video where Stephen shows off some Star Wars stuff, and he saves the best for last, and it's a signed Star Wars #1 comic book. And Stephen tells you that was given to me by my brother. Well, that was given to him by Matt. Matt's a comic book collector, and so he gave that to Stephen. These are our sisters. This is Sarah and Amy and Abbie. And so this is the again the eight of us, from many many years ago. Here's a little more recent picture. Now you can see we're not all there. Now my dad died in 2023, and so Stephen and I actually, Stephen did most of the funeral. I helped a little bit, but Stephen was the primary person who did the funeral for Dad. This was actually at my grandmother's funeral, my grandma Miller, Dad's mom, and so this was just last year, and that Stephen and I actually tag teamed that funeral together. And so this is at the farm. And in one of Steven's videos that I've watched, he talks about the farm and growing up and four-wheelers and all that kind of stuff. And that's where this was taken. This is on the front porch of the farmhouse there. And so here again, obviously this is last year, so our dad was gone already, and one of our sisters was not able to be at this, and so it's again a little more recent picture of them. So I'm not a I'm not a baseball guy. Never have been. Um, um, Stephen and I connected on mostly in our adult life. I mean, he was 7 years younger than me. And so, when you're 16 years old, at least for me, I wasn't hanging out much with my 9-year-old brother. Much to my later probably chagrin, of course, um, Stephen and I really drew a lot closer to each other in our adult years. And so, because again, we both went into pastoral ministry. So we both work full time. I work full time here at the college where I teach. And then I have a small church plant here where we live in McAlester, Oklahoma. And Stephen was doing the same thing. We both had spent several years doing kind of full time pastoral work and then decided to kind of switch things up. And so that was a place of great conversation and discussion for us. And that really goes back to his time in Scotland. So Stephen went to a Bible college in Edinburgh, Scotland, and I went over and visited him. I was in England on a trip for the church that I was working at, and had a free day, so I went up to Scotland, saw Stephen. Um, Not at that time, but later, Stephen gave me this Book of Common Prayer from the Church of England. So I'm an Anglican priest, and so these are the kinds of things that I love and cherish. And Stephen gave this to me, and I actually used this at the committal of our father when we buried him in 2023. Um, but that time of seeing Stephen in Edinburgh, and that would have been 2001. That was probably the real beginning of our kind of growth as brothers, as more than just kind of the sorry, as more than just kind of big brother and little brother, but really peers who had a lot in common. Um, and so our big things were pastoral ministry and Lord of the Rings. Um, a little more on that in a minute. I don't get into coffee at all. I'm a tea drinker, but Stephen would appreciate my mug here. Um, I never was a collector of cards and all that kind of stuff. I did try to get some. I went to Yukon in the 90s. I tried to find some Rebecca Lobo cards. And of course, as Stephen has mentioned, we're from Iowa. Try to find some Caitlin Clark cards. Those aren't exactly laying around on the street corner. And so, that was never really my thing anyway. Um, but Lord of the Rings collecting has been a big thing that both of us have enjoyed kind of discussing and um, being talking about those kinds of things. I'm gonna put in the I'll put in the comments my what I read at the funeral. I'll kind of talk a little bit more about those things that Stephen and I shared. Um, it's been shattering, this whole experience. This was so just out of the blue. Um, my my daughter is is super close with Steven's oldest, and I was sitting in my room. It was about 12:30 in the morning, and in Central Time, and my daughter comes in, and she's like, "What's going on with Uncle Steven?" I said, "I don't know." and she had got a text from Carly that told her that the possibility that her dad was going to die. And so I sent a message to Deanna and found out that indeed he had died, um, just completely, just completely out of the blue. um, there's no preparing for anything like that. um, there's Stephen and I had just been talking about Tolkien biographies the week before, um, and the Silmarillion and other things, and we'd had a big long phone conversation about our churches. We'd kind of get together once in a while and talk about those, and because even though we were in very different kinds of churches, we had a lot of similar experiences, and so this has just been just, yeah, it's there's no words for it really. um, so I just wanted to say thank you to all who have just shared wonderful tributes to Stephen. um, it's so cool to see how many people he, we knew about the church obviously and all that kind of stuff, but it's fun to see this other side of him, of these people that of folks that he knew. And it's been so great to kind of watch several of these videos, and kind of see more of that, and how that's all connected with you. So thank you all for that. And keep us in your prayers. Keep Stephen's wife Deanna and their kids in your prayers. And again, thank you for all that contributed to the GoFundMe, for all that have prayed, for all that have spoken kind words. It means more than we can say. Thank you.